Brothers and sisters, welcome to the TorahTalk Show with Lew White and Mark Davidson.
Well, I'd like to welcome all your brothers and sisters. Welcome to our new season of Torah Talk 2014, what we call 2014. It's in for another exciting season of truth and madness.
Yeah. We'll have some fun, hopefully, because we want to make it fun for everybody too.
It's a big thing, isn't it? This is the new wind. I didn't realise that actual Natsarim like you and I would take this seriously.
Oh yeah, it's enticing. You know, it's like drawing people with the mystery of it all. You know, they're very interested in these facilities that give them insights, secret insights, and they're being guided by rabbis. You know,
when we talked about lunar Sabbath and all that sort of thing, I mean, if somebody was that way inclined, you could try and read into it that it's not what it is. But to actually go to the zodiac and to all the yoga and everything you've just gone through, that's just like blatantly not. I mean, lunar Sabbath, you can read it into the Torah and it's there, it's Sabbath and all that. But this is just not even anything to do with Torah or scripture or...
That's a very interesting thing, Mark, because it's not even there at all. You can't even read it in there, even imagine it to be in there. Except they do jump into the book of Ayub or Job, and they do incline to get something out of the thing. But that's because the King James Version, 403 years ago, that's all they knew about the heavens. That's all they had. So they adapted the Hebrew words to mean whatever they could make them mean. But Yahuwah knows that he created galaxies even then, and he wrote the book of Eob. It's probably one of the earliest writings in the history of scriptures. The first book.
It's like evil spirits are coming to people and letting them know that their belief is not good enough. They have to come under a covering of not so much an elder, but someone more spiritual than them. You know, like, so they're going to all these other, rabbis and pastors and, if that's not true. Like, our experience, we've looked to elders coming out of Christianity, you're always looking to this pastor and that pastor and sucking up to them and, trying to get position and be a good little boy and do the right thing and be fake. And you come into this experience and you go through Hebrews 12 and the flogging and you realise you're having a real relationship yourself. It's great to be guided here and there, but you don't need to be, it's an agonising thing to be so into another person. So Yahusha's pulling us all away from that mindset we've all been into.
This is a very important thing too. Let me read this. This is pertaining to what this is all about, and it has to do with strongholds. We've gone through this many, many times. It says, "For though we walk in the flesh," this is 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 6 or so. It says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not fight according to the flesh. For the weapons we fight with are not fleshly, but they're mighty in Elohim for overthrowing strongholds, false reasonings, overthrowing reasonings, and every high matter that exalts itself against the knowledge of Elohim, taking captive every thought to make it obedient to the Mashiach." So it's talking about the strongholds are what we've been focusing on, and it frees a person, and they don't have to be under a yoga instructor or a guru or rabbi. You can have direct access to the mind of Mashiach, Yahusha himself, and he will guide you into the things he just said. We read from Yashayahu. He's completely consistent in everything he thinks and has had written down and recorded for us, and it's all the objective is to learn to know him, and the fruits of the Spirit are in the person that knows him, because without him you're a dried up branch.
Yeah,
You're just dead.
We've all
And-
felt it.
What was that?
We've all felt it.
Oh, yeah. When we're not connected to the root,
Yeah.
we can feel the lack of living water, But anyway, he wants us to be aware of these things. And, at that time, he was saying the same thing that we're saying here. And he said it in Matthew chapter 23. He said it very clearly. And all we have to do is just realize it. So you have any other comments or observations, or maybe an argument against what I just said? Or is Rabbinic Judaism really where we're supposed to be going? Is that the use of the Pharisees? Or am I wrong?
Oh, it's insane. I just can't believe people take that seriously. Oh. You're hard up for something to do, looking for other things.
Yeah.
Like life is not chaotic and busy enough.
The covenant is eternal. It's an eternal covenant. It means it's without end. And the sign of the eternal covenant is the Sabbath, or Shabbat is the correct word. And it means to stop. It's 3 Hebrew letters: Shin, Beth, Tav. Shabbat. That means to just stop. Just rest. Be restful. And that's the sign. So if we can do that, and an employer won't recognize it, well, we can go to the government in most countries and say, I'm having a problem with my employer. They're not listening to me. They're making me want to work, or they want me to work on the Shabbat. And they won't. We can work 6 days a week, but we can't work that one day. And they won't listen to me. Well, the government will step in and help you. And once they've done that, they can't fire you for any reason, other reasons, because the government's looking at it, at least. And they don't want people to persecute each other. Government is there for a reason. In some cases, it has bad ideas, like killing unborn babies. But that's destroying the world. That's one of the reasons Yahusha is going to come back and burn the earth. But it isn't just the one country, the whole world. But there's a lot of mistreatment out there. The Arab world is destroying itself. The household of the Arabs, the Islamic thing. The Arabs are people. They're descendants of Abraham. But they're following a faith that's destroying everybody. And themselves mostly, but others too. So we're not to judge them, but we can judge the way they act, their behavior. So when we see bad behavior, then we can say, well, that must be a bad tree. But you look at the fruit. So Yahusha said you identify a tree by the fruit that is on that tree. And when we see bad fruit, we can say, well, that must be a bad tree. Because a good tree can produce bad fruit. Nor can a bad tree produce good fruit.
Yeah, it's clever to discern that way, because otherwise you open your heart to people and you just get stabbed. If you look at the fruit and you say, well, that fruit's not Yahusha, that Yahusha doesn't behave like that, your armour, which should be on anyway, definitely goes on.
Yeah.
No,
we're not condemning. We're not condemning.
No. We were saying tonight that I don't think a lot of Natsarim understand that Yahusha's doing everything. He calls us, he finds us a wife or a husband, he marries us, he's right there with us, taking us through every trial. Don't say this, say this. If you say something you're not supposed to say, you feel it big time, and he's taking us and leading us and training us and flogging us, and he's doing everything, and he's right there in your face all day, every day. You can't get away from him. And it's ever since we moved up here, he's coming closer to us, and it's so exciting. It says, do not despise the discipline. A lot of people, like with the mountain, no, just send Moshe up. We don't want to get that close. It's too much pain. it's so exciting. I mean, it hurts a lot when you're looking at yourself and just looking how horrid your behaviour is at times. But the exciting thing about it is he wouldn't be chastising us or flogging us if we weren't his sons and daughters. Like he's preparing us for something massive, I believe, that we're really going to need our wits about us.
Yeah. The name, and I'll write this down on a piece of paper. This is going to be fun. I love the name. You've got a yod. See? That's a yod. And we're going to write Hebrew from right to left. Then we've got a hey. That's like our H. Yod. And together they sound like in the Hebrew, Yah. That's without the Masoretic distortion. Now, if you write the third letter, it's sort of like a Y. It went into Greek as an upsilon, the letter U. And if you put these together, it's Yahu. Yahu. And there's a coin that you can look up on the internet. You can find this in the late captivity in Daniel's lifetime. There's a coin with these three letters written in Paleo Hebrew. This is Hebrew. If I write it in a foreign alphabet, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, this is called a yod, and this is a hey, and this is a ua, not a wawa. There's no W. Anyway, this is a foreign alphabet. It's called modern Hebrew, but it's an Aramaic. That means that it's a foreign alphabet. Now, if I use the Latin alphabet, which we think is the English alphabet, it isn't. Okay, yod. This is a Y. Now, this is Latin. This is Latin. This is Latin. Well, we're not writing English letters. There are no English letters in our understanding of things. We're using Latin to write down English language. So language and alphabet are not always the same. They can be. For example, this is Hebrew, and it's a Hebrew alphabet and a Hebrew language. But when we write this language in Latin, then it becomes it's the same letters, equivalency, but the thing of it is the language is not the same as the alphabet. The same here. We call this Aramaic, and the Aramaic is a foreign alphabet, but it is the Hebrew language. Anyway, what does that say in all three of these alphabets? It says Yahu. I didn't see that when I was being trained by others that were older than me. And then if we add the sheen, see the A has two different pronunciations. There's a short A and a long A. Like if you say Abraham, you see that's a long A. And if you say then it's more of an E sound. We could use either one really. But in the Hebrew, we've got Yahu, and then we've got a sheen, which is actually these are teeth. That's why they look like teeth. That's the letter sheen. And that's an ayin, and it literally means the eye. These are pictographic. So you've got a yod, a hey, an ua, a sheen, and an ayin. And this is, of course, the Aramaic forms of these letters. So when you say this, you say Yahusha. It's just Yahusha, like Alicia or Aisha, Aisha. That's the word for woman. So that's real simple, and it seems very simple to me now, but that's the way truth is. When you see it, it appears, and it's self-evident. You don't have to add any more or take away anything. And then there's people that say, well, you have to add the vowels. Well, the vowels are all here. See, there's vowels in Hebrew, just like there's vowels in Hebrew, and there's vowels in Greek, and there's vowels in Latin, there's vowels in English. But we understand that the people that say there's no vowels written in Hebrew are just unaware. Well, that's the Mother Church is what it is. She calls herself the Mother. They refer to their organization as Mother Church, and they want everyone to come back to the Mother. The daughters need to come back, and that's the healing of the deadly wound. When they do, and they come back under the headship of the papacy, which is actually the actual objective of the Jesuit order, is actually to return power back to the papacy.
I've been thinking this week about the concept of being invaded and trying not to be invaded, not letting my vessel be invaded, because of course if that happens, your behaviour changes, whether it be to your wife or to clients or to your children. If you just lose your cool or go off the handle and you get invaded with judgments and evil spirits, that sort of thing. And I thought that would be an interesting thing to address, looking at scripture in the future, just for believers to know what really is coming at them in their mind, the principalities that are coming at them in the first person, talking to them as though they're them, as though they're us, so we think it's us. I thought that would be an interesting topic to address in the future, using scripture as the basis, like I said, looking at Yahusha, not the evil, but looking at Yahusha. And I also, last weekend, I think it was on telly, I sat down with the boys and we were watching the Matrix trilogy, and so ever since I watched that, the concept of being a slave and Israel being scattered, but being so indoctrinated and bombarded, plugged into a false system to keep them asleep to who they really are, and they're just a slave. All that metaphors and things they use in that movie were just like, oh, that's just fabulous. Oh yeah, I'm just looking at it, oh, amazing. And so all these things have been bounced around in my head to do something with it. I don't know what yet. If you feel inspired, you might be able to do something with it. But I just thought the idea of being a slave, the whole world is not allowed to know. And if somebody starts to wake up, like in the movie, if somebody starts to wake up to the fact that this isn't real, this is a dream, I need to wake up, then they just get bombarded. They get bombarded. Like you said about the circus, they go along and they get inoculated and they just go back to sleep. And they're a slave again. So I haven't really put it into a point yet, but just me personally, in my day, I'm just trying to not get invaded, trying to keep that at the front of my mind. Don't get invaded. If you get angry, lose your cool, don't do what Torah says, that's evil spirits. You get invaded. Your behaviour changes and you get smacked around by Yahusha. It's not fun. So you got to confess the truth and get free. Say sorry, repent. But so yeah, that's what I've been thinking about this week.
Well, it's amazing. We have the same mind shared. We're sharing Yahusha's mind, and he was putting on my heart to do a study and maybe call it the armor of light, and it would be based on Ephesians chapter 6. As kind of the tonic or basic tonic. And the armor of Yahuwah is, you have to have the complete armor, and he uses the metaphor of a soldier, the helmet, the shield, the sword, the belt, the shoes. Everything has to have a purpose and a function, and a breastplate, of course. Yeah, and these are all symbols of things, and it's amazing that you had the same idea, because we're in a war. We're in a war, and we're fighting with weapons of love. It's just the opposite. It's like Yahusha himself. While we were yet sinners, he died for us. He wasn't punishing us for our, we're in revolt, and instead of punishing us in our rebellion, he's dying for us.
Mm.
And he said, the son of Adam came eating and drinking, and they say, see a man, a glutton and a wine drinker, a friend of tax collectors and sinners, and wisdom was declared right by her works. Now that statement right there at the end, and wisdom was declared right by her works. That's been translated in many different ways. But in essence, let's dismantle that little phrase, wisdom. What is that? Well, it's Torah. It's the thing we just finished reading, the core of the Torah. The heart is the covenant itself. It's a marriage covenant. And the thing that makes it really come alive is to spring forth into our hearts and grow into our minds. And then we behave as if Yahusha is able to use our vessels in such a way that we see everything the way he sees it. And we don't agree anymore with the way we used to look at the world. We don't want to control. We want to be controlled. So then we can love. And that's what these do. They teach you how to love Yahuwah, the first four, and then the last six, how to love your neighbor. And you don't steal your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods or covet them or lie to your neighbor or do any of that. You respect your parents and you don't murder people. It's just wonderful. You're looking for opportunities to help your neighbor all the time. And then by doing so, you're actually lifting yourself up because you're helping others. Well, that's the core of it. And I just think this yoke is a misunderstood thing. But in this verse, wisdom was declared right by her works. Her being wisdom is kind of reminiscent of Proverbs. She is posted at the head of the streets. Her voice cries out at the doorposts. It actually says that. Well, why would her voice cry out at the doorposts? Anybody out there know? Well, you're supposed to write the commandments on your doorposts. In fact, these little things that double as bookmarks, you can write your own, but you can write them literally on your doorposts, the commandments. Like there's your first commandment. Let's write it on there. Or you can post it, in a little card you can print out and just stick it right there, so that your children can go by the doorpost and see it. And I mean every doorpost. If they're in your house, they'll be able to read them. And they're supposed to be on your gates, the gates of your city. Or if you have a gate, put it on your gate. So that's why Proverbs talks about wisdom, and it's obviously talking about Torah. Well, Torah is this message. This is the message. It's the tree of life. It's all sorts of things, but it's the instructions. That's what Torah means. So we've got this phrase, and wisdom was declared right by her works. Well, wisdom is Torah, and it's justified, or its manifestation through obedience. When you obey wisdom, then it's in your behavior, and you're performing wisdom. You're actually doing the commandments. That's what Yaakov or James is talking about. Do the word. Well, when this happens, the outcome or the results are the evidence of its uprightness and its purity and its righteousness. The outcome is going to show that to everyone, because they say, well, yeah, that would have been the best. So when people rashly respond in the flesh to a lot of reactions, and then they mirror the thing that's coming at them. If they're being attacked, and then they reflect that back, and it gets ramped up and ramped up. Pretty soon, people are shooting each other. Well, instead of that, if somebody's coming at you, and this is what Yahusha always was like, he would respond to violence with peace and kindness and forgiveness. What about that? And say, oh, I'm sorry, I must have offended you. And how can I make this right? Let me be humble. See, when you turn into a humble, you know, a person that an angry person is coming after, then you would change the whole future of that problem, you know, instead of trying to match it, you know. And that's really important.
We were discussing the other day that the word deliverance has kind of been taken away from the text completely over the last however many years, and they've chucked this kind of useless word, salvation, in there. Like, it doesn't convey the meaning of being delivered from something. Like the people who cried out and, you know, ran after Yahusha with evil spirits inside them, and, you know, tormented and, you know, cutting themselves, and those people understood what deliverance from evil meant. And it's kind of lost in these modern times that when you come to Yahusha, you are very much delivered from a big part of what's controlling you, a big part of what's flowing through your head. Maybe not all of them straight away, because as you read the Torah and you check your thoughts, you're cleansing it all the time, particularly coming into Passover each year. We're finding that big time right now. All of us over here, it's been a real heavy time. Discussions and arguments, and just coming into Passover, he's cleansing out all the leaven. And we just think it's, we don't eat unleavened bread. No way, he's like... And so that's what I want to say as well to all the brothers and sisters. If you're going through pressure, or you're wondering why there's like more pressure than usual, or more arguments than usual with your spouse, or like things are arising, it's Yahusha. Yahusha's coming closer, and we found he does that this time of year, every year, to cleanse out the leaven, which is, you know, false teachings, bad behaviours. So we found that amazing, just the deliverance, to be delivered from evil. Most of us don't even think we're evil to start with, but to be delivered, it just rang in my... started rattling around when you started explaining his name. He was the embodiment of deliverance. He only just looked at people, and demons just ran for their lives. Like, it's and he didn't even know about it, and people would run up and touch his tzitzit, and, you know, who touched me? You know, like, what's going... like, it was just... to be a witness of that would just have been phenomenal.
Why is behavior tightly controlled? If you don't fall into line, they throw you out. Why is the state, the government, why do they reward religious organizations with tax exemptions? Why do they do that? And why do Christians eat pigs? And why don't they observe the Sabbath and the festivals? There's a reason for this. It's because of one thing. They don't want to look and behave like the Yahudim have been known to behave. In other words, they stand off from the Torah. They stand off from the Ten Commandments. That's what the Torah is. They don't want to behave like that because of one thing. There was something that happened a long time ago after the destruction of the temple. It was in 70 CE when Vespasian and his son Titus wiped out the temple, the Masada, and they just wiped everybody out there, and they carried all this wealth back to Rome, and then they started to impose a tax upon everyone who behaved a certain way. That's why. The Hebrew roots were completely severed. Yeah. And anyway, the pagan religions, they had these people that trained them. We're going to study this a little bit later, but the people who taught them in the mysteries of the faith, mysteries of the pagan faith. They were called mystagogues. And that's what they did. But anyway, here's something that I wanted to mention too. This is something that maybe people don't think about, but when behavior, when it's taxed, you get less of it. You see, it just stands to reason. If you're going to get taxed for doing something or having something, then you're going to do less of it because you don't want to have it.
The practical application of being a Natsarim and reading and obeying the Torah is something that I think needs to be more widespread. I mean, someone like myself who's been in this for probably nearly 10 years, and yet I know what comes at me. Like you said, from the minute you wake up, you can either choose to communicate with Yahusha, which is prayer, or, because if you don't, the state most of us are in some days is you wake up to a flood of negative thoughts. I've got to do this and this and this and this and this today, and I think I just won't get out of bed. Like we're running a business, you've got children, you've got life, you've got expenses, you've got pressure. Like we're in a great pressure, probably not as bad as it's coming, but we're in a great pressure. So I think how to relate to Yahusha, and like the scripture says, the love of Yahusha is better than wine. Well, I don't know too many people who walk around feeling kind of tipsy, drunk, on Yahusha's love. So I think there's a place we have to get to.
There is, yeah.
And I don't know too many people, only a couple who I think are attaining that. The greater part of us, the younger generation, is getting overcome a lot by like you said, the pride of life, the desires of the flesh, the position, who we think we have to be in society, or what we think we have to achieve to be worthwhile, following in other generations' footsteps, things like that. And then in the middle of it, trying to get the word, the Besorah, out into the world, treading a fine balance between being in the world and not being of it, that. So I think these kind of issues need to be discussed a lot, because I don't think we're feeling the way we should be feeling. If we're not feeling it, not having the right behaviour towards the scripture, the Torah, and definitely not each other, then we're going to be foolish virgins.
During the Middle Ages, they call it the Dark Ages as well, because people were illiterate and everybody was running around on muddy roads. That's all they had. They didn't have paved roads, and when they did, it was just a small area. But the Middle Ages, okay, the main event for any city or town was the cathedral. If they had a cathedral, they had a bishop there. And a cathedral is the Latin word cathedra, which means throne, and it meant the throne of a bishop. Well, the bishops were all collectively thinking, hey, these priests are really illiterate. They don't know how to read. They don't know anything. So the beginnings of universities started when they started these things called cathedral schools. And they taught the priesthood at first. And then they started teaching the nobility's children, like the people who would be the future government officials and future clergy. So, the cathedral schools developed into what we know today as seminaries and universities. So, what is in the teachings of those places? Well, whatever was in the cathedral schools was inherited into the seminaries. And then from there it flowed down to the universities, and they controlled them because they infiltrated them, because they were training the people from the very beginning what they were to believe. And that's what this is about. And now it's got us swallowing, literally eating, defiling blighters. Wow. I mean, in other words, the circus fathers, or the church fathers as they call them, were being taught through the cathedral schools, and then through the seminaries and through the universities. So now we're taught there's nothing wrong with anything you want to eat. Whatever you want to eat is fine. And they'll take you to a scripture like Mark or something, and they'll say, look, he said it. But it wasn't food that he was describing, He wasn't even saying it, because that was something they inserted into the text. Yahuwah loves us, and he shows us all the time in subtle ways, sometimes huge ways, and then we ignore it. Some of these huge things that he does for us, and we don't even notice it. you know. And all we have to do is just decide what we're going to do, make a plan, and then follow his lead, and then do what he says in the Word. Because it says, be doers of the Word, and not hearers only. And what word is he talking about? You know.
The main thing that struck me going through all that is the word clean and unclean. So important. It's not. We're not just having a thing about food. It's our bodies are so complex and on many levels. And are we clean? What we say, what we think, what comes out of our heart, comes out of our mouth. What we put in our mouth. What are we defiling ourselves? That's really going through all that with you. I've seen that the scripture, the Torah, is always just trying to keep us clean. He's just trying to keep us clean and obedient. And if you do what I say, you'll be protected. Stay in the zone of the Torah. Stay in the Torah zone. Do what the Torah says, and you're safe. You're protected. Be obedient. You don't have to worry about the plagues. You don't have to worry about the diseases. I'll bless you. I'll protect you. So that's made me more aware now of myself, my vessel, my home, the people in it. As the guardian of the home, I just think, okay, are there things unclean? Really important. Cleanliness, clean and unclean. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, you can use a physical napkin. That's why I brought the tie out, when I was wearing the tie. But this is not, there's a history behind the tie. It's the napkin, the Henry VIII thing. But we need to have our vessel cleaned on the inside, like you were saying, first. And then the outside will be clean also.
With the cleanliness too, I think it's all about getting into order. That's what I've been seeing the last couple of weeks. We're always throwing our hands up in the air asking Yahusha, what should I do here? What should I do there? Teach me your way. What's your will? He's already given us all that instruction. And because we've come out of cosmic religions that are always waiting for some, cosmic weird experience, it's not like that. It's all written in the Torah. And I was saying to the boys the other day, Yahusha wants us to have everything in order. Like he wants us to keep everything clean, keep everything tidy, keep everything in order. I said, do you ever wake up in the morning and the sun's not there? What if he just decided to change his mind and the sun doesn't come up? You've got to live the whole day in pitch black. There'll be one day when that happens, but I'm saying he is in order. Everything, the sun rises and sets, it's never stopped. He wants us in order. So that's what I'm learning. I've been taking over slowly the family finances and the business and everything because, Amy's been pregnant and having a hard time, so I'm taking a lot of the stuff off her. And I'm finding it so sobering. It's like waking up from a dream. And it's so exciting to see where you're at, what you got to pay. Oh, guess what? I just paid this and we're free of that. Great. And you just go through the list and Yahusha's just showing me a different thing now. And it's kind of talking about being clean and unclean. Have everything in order. If you're not sure what to do in your life, or you're waiting for the next instruction from Yahusha, just look around your room. Just look around your room. Clean up, he'll tell you, that's messy, clean it up. That's dirty, get rid of that. That's got stains on it, scrub that. It's not it is a deep experience, but a lot of people are thinking way too spiritually. Yahusha is very practical. He's very, very practical. You're walking down the street, he might tell you to pick something up. I didn't put it there. Pick it up. He's very... That's what I'm starting to see. And what you said today with the clean and unclean just kicks the point home. It's so important to have everything in order so that when he does move and when he does come into our life and maybe a new person comes along, we've got everything organised. Everything is flowing and working and our families are behaving the right way. So important. We
perceive that they teach us how to love. That's every single commandment. It's all about love. The two branches, the ones that, the first four teach us how to love Yahuwah, and the last six teach us how to love our neighbor. In other words, every other being that's in the world with us. And they're not difficult. If we live in the Word, we're doing what it says, and we walk as Yahusha walked. We live our belief. Our core belief is that these words are pure and inspired, and we live by them, and we love them. I mean, here we are talking about the Torah on Torah Talk. We love the commandments. How did that happen? Well, Yahusha chose us, and then we chose him in response. And we've enjoined to these into the covenant when we're immersed. That's what we're doing. We're pledging a good conscience. Our inner lamp accepts and submits, and that's what we do. We just submit to his indwelling spirit to enable us to give us the power to love them and to obey their commandments. So we become new creations. And they instill in us and replace the mind of the flesh, and the mind of the spirit of Yahusha comes in. That's for any of you that may not know. The Christians are constantly asking this question: who is the Spirit? What is the Spirit? Is it a power, or is it a person? What's his name? Well, I'll tell you what. There's only one, and the only one that's omnipresent, the only one that can forgive sins, is the Creator of the universe. And his name, as we're told to call on it, is Yah, as our deliverer, is Yahusha in Hebrew. That's who it is. That's who's living in you. So if you don't know who the Spirit is, he said to Philip, "Have I been with you so long, Philip, that you have not known me? He who has seen me has seen the Father." And he said in another place that, well, what was it? I was trying to think of this other reference. He was saying that no one knows who the Father is except the Son, and no one knows who the Son is except the Father. And the only way that you're going to find out his identity is if he reveals his identity to you. But the Trinity is, of course, the teaching that keeps you from knowing who he is. That's why they're in such confusion. He won't stand for that nonsense. If you teach false doctrine on that level, on a personal level, to know him, and then you keep that Trinity blocking, he's going to keep himself secret. He's going to hide from you. But if you want to know who he is, just ask him, "Are you Yahusha?" And he'll say, "Oh yeah, that's who I am." I'm glad to meet you. And anyway, the mind of Yahusha is what dwells in us. And he said, "It's good for you that I go away. If I did not go away, the Paraclete would not come to you." Well, what is Paraclete? Well, it's originally an Aramaic word, but it went into the Greek too. Para, meaning come up alongside, and kleta. Paraclete means the one that comes alongside and assists you, empowers you, and gives you the things that you need to equip you to be able to obey the Ten Commandments and love them. And he's the one that indwells you. And he said, "It's good that I go away, and then I will not leave you or forsake you. I will come to you." Who's coming to you? He said, "I am coming to you. I have been with you, but I will be in you." Did you hear that? I'm not quoting personally. I'm just quoting off the cuff, but that's what he said. He said, "I am with you. I have been with you, but I will be in you." That's the thing that you have to understand. See, these are secrets that are buried from theologians because they have to have that Trinity, and it's blocking their view. They can't see. It's like they're veiled. But now we, without veils, reveal the messenger himself, the presence of Yahusha. That's what we do. That's what he said. What it says in Paul's writings, that we are unveiled, not like Moshe. Our faces don't have a veil over them. We're telling you who he is. But false doctrines will paralyze and make us drunk and intoxicated, and it will produce weed behavior. The false seed produces malice, hatred, strife, jealousy, division, selfishness, dissent, slanders, foul talk, and pride, and more evil than that. But if we will follow Yahusha, then we will discover what his will is, and we will obey him.
It's amazing how you can walk along and think there's something wrong with you, can't you? Because why can we see this and it's so obvious, and like if you can't see it, it's like the things they believe are kind of stupid. Like, is there something wrong with us because we can see that this is the truth? Like we were saying last week with your funny little good, bad and ugly guy who's sitting up there, you know, we don't need no stinking Torah, you know, we tithe. Like, there's all this stupid stuff they do.
What's that?
Is there something wrong with us because we can hear Yahusha, we can see it, we want like, I'm sure a lot of people sense that there's something wrong, that they're not getting told the truth, but then they just go back to sleep. They get inoculated, like you say. And it's, you can, like, we rejoice now, but for a while there, you're like, why can't you see this? Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, why have I been woken up? I'm nothing. Why, like, it's just amazing, isn't it?
We hear people all the time, relatives and some close friends, they'll say, what's happened to you? Why are you acting like this? Why don't you do the things that you used to do with me and us? And, you know, what about this celebration? You won't do birthdays, you put the tree up, you know, what's gone wrong, you know? But anyway, what we realize is we have to have a close relationship with our Creator. And that relationship depends on a close relationship, depends on our response to his instructions. And when we read his instructions, which don't change, I mean, like he says, this is good and this is bad. Well, it kind of can't change, you know. It's like, this is always good and this is always bad. And if we just follow that, then we're walking in light instead of darkness. And we say, well, if it made him mad then, it's going to make him mad now. So what we want to do is please him. So, but yet some people believe that, you know, this is what we should do. Because we claim that we know him and we obey his commandments. And we say, I know him because I know how he is. That's what the difference is. See, the one that claims they know him, that means they know how he is. And the one that claims they know him but they don't obey his commandments, apparently they don't know him. So that's the difference. Now the builders, that would be the teachers, they've rejected the stone, you know, the chief cornerstone. The one that they rejected, they didn't know was the chief cornerstone. But in Psalm 118, 21 and 22, it says, I thank you, for you have answered me and have become my deliverance. Now what's that? Yahuwah has become my deliverance. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Now that also that means the keystone. There's a keystone picture, if you want to put that up. There's a little keystone picture. Now that holds the whole thing up. There's a doorway and a wall, and the whole thing is held up. The weight of all of it is held up by the keystone, because both sides build up, and then they're held up by this top stone. He's the top stone. He's the chief extremity stone. A lot of times people think of it as the cornerstone of the building, of the foundation, and that is applicable as well.
That fear is a big thing. The fear. That's all through Psalms, all through Proverbs. The fear of Yahuwah is this, the fear, the beginning of knowledge, the fear. I looked it up a few weeks ago because I thought, even Natsarim, they don't want to fear him. They want him as their best friend. He wouldn't flog me, you know, he's loving and kind, and, you know, the fear, mate, I don't, like, the more you come into this, the further you walk down the path, like, I'm bloody afraid, mate. Like, I don't want to step out of line. It hurts. You know, like, the flogging is, like, painful. Like, I fear. Like, I think that's what fear is, isn't it? A respect. Like, It's like you want to obey. It's your worship. It's your behaviour. Your obedience. Like, I don't want to step out of line. It hurts, mate. It's pain, agony. People don't want that.
That's the truth. I don't know. It's like, well, you do reach a point where you have such great love for him and I taught my children this all my life. The thing that I do when I discipline you is I'm showing you that I love you. Because if I don't discipline you, then I don't love you, and you're not really my child, my real child. I don't care enough for you. If you're not being disciplined, then that means you're not his child. And that's the truth.
From everything you wrote there, if you don't have his name, you don't have any Shekinah, you don't have any physical presence or power, you're not the Mishkan, you're not his dwelling place, there's no paracletor, there's no helper, no one coming alongside you to give you power or help, and you are not sealed for protection, which means you are not his. And if fire just happens to come and spread across this earth, where's your protection?
How do you learn how to love? The 10 Commandments. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Have no other before my face. What is that? That's love. Number 2, you do not bow to images. That's love. Number 3, you don't cast the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to ruin. That's love. Remember Shabbat to keep it set apart. That's love. Honor your father and your mother. That's love. You do not murder. That's love. You do not break wedlock. That is love. You do not steal. That's love. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. That's love. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, house, field, servants, animals, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. That's love. Love me as I have loved you. That's love. Love is serving others. That's what it is.
You don't want to find that you've woken up at the great white throne judgment. As a believer, you'd be so disappointed. You'd be like, even if you do slip in to the kingdom and you make it, you'd be like, well, what happened to the wedding? What happened to the supper? What happened to the marriage supper? Oh, you missed it. That was 1,000 years ago. You know, it's like you'd be so disappointed. So I'm starting to see that if you really want to be the bride, rather than going through the judgment at the end, we're all kind of going through it now. We're all going through the fire and the pain and the flogging and the, getting perfect, like overcoming the evil now, behaving the right way. And if you don't make it, you might have to lose your life. Isn't that what the people under the altar in Revelation, they had to lose their lives? Yeah. So So a lot of Natsarim don't realise that, the wise and foolish virgins, half the Natsarim community is asleep. They might have to lose their own lives. And it's really sad. They might you might make it into the city eventually, but you've missed all the good stuff.
Yeah.
It's really serious.
I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Have no other before my face. Let's not have anything before his face, and say we didn't. So we're actually saying it. That's complicated, I know, but you'll get into it. And then the second commandment is, you do not bow to images. Let's not, and say we didn't. Yeah. That works. Phyllis got worn out on that because I was going down. We were walking along saying the commandments. Imagine that. You walk out of your house and you're saying the commandments. Number 3 is, you do not bow to images. Let's not, and say we didn't. Number 4, remember Shabbat to keep it set apart. Let's do, and say we did. Get it?
I do.
Honor your father and your mother. Let's do, and say we did. Number 5, you do not murder. No, number 6, you do not murder. Let's not. And say we didn't. Imagine that. And number 7, you do not break wedlock. Let's not. And say we didn't. Number 8, you do not steal. Let's not. And say we didn't. We be truthful. Let your yes be yes, your no be no. Number 8. Number 9, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Let's not. And say we didn't. Number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's house, field, his wife, servants, animals, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Let's not. And say we didn't. And the new commandment Yahusha gave us, love one another as I have loved you. Let's do. And say we did. I know it's pathetic, but it's fun. It makes you think about the commandments, you know. And we're saying we thought about it. That's Torah talk.
Yes. It amazes me how many different ways you can come up with presenting the commandments. It's the most important thing, so why not?
Yeah.
It's earlier in what you were saying, you said that we should not fight it, not fight Yahusha, give over, let him do what he's doing. And I was thinking it's so important to not fight his process that he's doing in us, because if this happens this year or if it happens next year, he knows what your training schedule is. We don't know what our training schedule is. We can't say, "Oh, I've had enough training now. I've passed. I've had enough of this." He knows what our training schedule is. I look back. I was saying to Amy the other day, I look back a year ago at the way I've been Natsarim for nearly a decade now, but I look back just a year at what's happened this year and how I used to think, behave, treat people, just things I used to think in my heart, the way I used to reason. And just from pure flogging, I don't, I'm not there, but I don't feel like that. This year has been a phenomenal year, and yet we seem to say that every single year. Oh, wasn't that? What about what's happened this year? Like, it's never ending. And for people who just want to dig their heels in and say, "Okay, I've got it now. I'm going. I've got what I want to do." You can't fight his process. You can't pretend you're not getting flogged. You can't declare you don't believe in flogging. You can't just pretend that your misery is joy. You got to give over, particularly if you are an immersed believer in Yahusha. I hope this teaching today will help people understand why they're going through the training process they are, because you don't want to wake up at the end of the millennium and find out that you're not the bride. You're just an acquaintance.
You're a friend of the bride, but you're not the bride.
Yeah.
It's like people are saying that I'm born again. Well, no, you're begotten from above. His seed is growing in you. You know.
Where do you stand on, like, when you think about the reapers? And a few times you said, if we are washed in his blood and if we are immersed, if we're sealed with his name, if we're sealed in his name, we are safe against the reapers. Well, somebody who's still, I speak even from personal experience, somebody who's sealed in his name can often be a total horrible person with horrible behavior and not overcoming. I guess that's not for us to judge, but how do you I find it hard to just say someone who's sealed in his name is safe from the reapers, because we get sealed in his name on our immersion. And that for me was many, many years ago. And I don't like the way I behaved many, many years ago. Like last year, this year, I don't like the way I behave. So,
it's a beginning point, yeah.
Yeah. So how can you... I think that's the thing. Christians say, you've got to earn your salvation, do you? By following the commandments. It's like, no, but we are on a path of deliverance. I was talking to Chris about this the other day. He said, well, you've said it, Mark. Do you believe that? Or do you think you are delivered from the very beginning? And I said, well, there's two resurrections. I said, I think we're delivered from the second resurrection the minute we are immersed. But I said, I'm not satisfied with that anymore. I want to make the first resurrection. And I think that's the path. And like you said, with the feasts, the feasts are a redemptive process. We do them every year. We learn more about what they mean, and they change us a little bit more. They're redemptive feasts. We are being redeemed by doing these feasts, which means we mustn't have been redeemed before. Even though we've got his name on us and sealed, there must be something we're getting redeemed from that's better than just the second resurrection. And there is. The first one.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah.
Mm.
It's something that we strive for in the first resurrection.
Yeah.
And his come to be his bride. You know. It's about the relationship between his bride and himself, and his pouring his spirit out on all flesh, meaning men and women both. And his spirit is his ruach, his breath, and his mind. He's going to share his mind. And Amos 3 verse 7, I believe, says that he shares with his prophets, which is anybody that has his mind in them, really, to understand his words, the things that he's about to do before he does it. So these are very important things, because the people that have an ear to hear what the Spirit, the Ruach, is saying to the assemblies, that's what this is all about. The people that have that understanding and an ear to hear it. We're actually looking for his truth, you know, and he is the truth. So Yahusha is the truth. When we read some of these things in here, and it says something like the knowledge of the truth. Well, the knowledge of the truth is knowing him, because he's the truth. And he reveals himself and his truth by circumscribing the love for his instructions, his Torah, on our hearts, so that we are his bride, because his bride's obedient. But the ones that are not his bride may also be his followers, but they aren't obedient. They're dirty, filthy, they're mixing, and they're like goats. You know how goats are? If you ever see a goat, and they're really getting into being a goat, they leap around, and they jump, and they'll jump up in the air, and they'll turn, and they'll just be, you know, basically crazy looking, you know. Goats are like, you know, filled with this capricious whole spirit or attitude. Now, sheep are a little bit less like that. Sheep's behavior is more like, where's the herd? Okay, come on now. Here I'm with you, aren't I? Goats are not like that. Goats are, wow. It's like, what? It's like this big turbulence.
Party time.
So the shepherd owns both of them. They're his. But the goats, man, they're messed up. They're leaping and turning in the air. That's the difference between the sheep and the goats, and we're going to touch on that in this. Because the 5 wise virgins are the sheep, and the 5 unwise virgins are the goats. They're identified by the oil, and the oil is the truth, the knowledge of the truth. The 5 wise virgins are the first fruits, the bride of Yahusha, and they are of the higher calling, being in the first resurrection that Yahushua is coming. The 5 unwise enter into their reward 1,000 years later at the second resurrection. The 4 blood moons are not involved. Wise managers, or stewards, who teach, which means feed, the assembly, which is the household, are those who are watching and waiting at the door, and we're ready for the return of our Master. And we know what's going to happen, but not to every detail, but we get the general picture, and we won't be frightened to death when we see him coming. We'll be extremely excited. Of course, he's in us already, so we'll be going, uh-oh, we're getting double joy, because he's coming, and he's already here too. You know, it's amazing. Today we're going to talk about maybe some way that we can conceptually think of our problem as being a virus in a computer system, an operating system. Everybody's pretty familiar with their phone and their computer, and if you get a virus or 2 or 10 or 20 viruses in your computer, it runs slower and it's kind of dumber, and it's easy to cause problems, and sometimes you're completely blocked from things. This virus example is kind of what happened to us all throughout time, through the ages of men ruling themselves, because they've adopted, in addition to the Ten Commandments, they've adopted all this other stuff they've added in to kind of improve their understanding of who he is, and they say, oh, he's three. No, he's not. He's not three, but they think he is. So this has blocked their comprehension, and all those things that happen in an operating system have happened to us culturally. So what we have to do is we have to get a virus cleaner, and what is the best virus cleaner for our problem? What are we missing the most? We're missing love. So if we can get back to the foundation of knowing who he is and what he wants, and how to love our neighbor, how to love him and love our neighbor, then we've got a virus cleaner there. The liturgies. Where's liturgy? Where's a liturgy found in Scripture? The process of when we meet together, there's this little behavioral thing we go through, and then don't forget the basket. Pass that basket. What? All this stuff is added. It's not in the list. Anyway, if we can get our virus cleaner, this is going to clean out your system. Your operating system is your heart, your mind. And if we can do that, then we can reboot, we can turn the system off, and then come back, and what pops up on the screen is our operating system, the Ten Commandments. And it's all cleaned out, the virus is gone, and there's no liturgies, there's nobody in charge other than Yahusha. And so we're back. That's what's happened to us. That's what has happened to us. We said, throw it all out, clean the system, then come back with the foundation. And people don't like that because, see, they're plugged into dispensationalism, which is a word probably you should look up. Dispensationalism and replacement theology, which is all stuff that it's a virus. Yeah.
We had things happening last week where you can't get into certain videos if you haven't updated the latest version of the player, which is interesting. Like Yahusha's always moving. If you're not, in the Torah, you're not following him. You can't see things that you could possibly see. Since we're talking computer lingo, you got to stay updated.
What is the Spirit saying to the assemblies?
Yeah.
Like, are you up to date? Have you heard the latest news?
Mm.
So what's wrong with legalism? Well, Yahuwah surely loves to see us being legalistic. If we're legalistic, that means we're obeying his commandments. Pastors have been crying out about half of my life. I'm 64, almost 65 in a few months. And half of my life, I've heard these pastors crying out, legalism, legalism. What is legalism? Well, legalism is being legal in the eyes of Yahuwah. And sin is another word for crime. Breaking the law of Yahuwah makes us a criminal, and yet his indwelling enables us to love his instructions, his Torah. And we'll see crime against his Torah the same way he does. I mean, we agree with the Torah. We don't fight against it. We actually love it. And if you see somebody that says, I love the Torah, I love his commandments, wouldn't you like to be in that person's shoes? Especially on Judgment Day? Or instead of saying, I didn't like your commandments and I never thought we had to obey them. Well, that's a poor defense. But I tried to obey them, and I think I did better than I would if I hadn't have tried. Anyway, what's this thing about the law being nailed to the crux? That's not what's nailed there. What's nailed there is the list of our crimes, the kairographen in the Greek. It's a list of accusations that were against us. The list of accusations that were against us is a list of our crimes. They're wiped clean by the blood of the Messiah, Mashiach. So that was what was nailed to the tree, him, because he became crime for us. He became the criminal and took the blame and the full force of the penalty of the crime. And we were spared that. What's so hard to understand? Now, if the list of our accusations that were against us, that were handwriting, that were against us, that's what chirographin means, handwriting. If they've been taken out of the way, because Yahusha took them away through his shed blood, then the list of our crimes was nailed to the stake, because he was nailed to the stake. They can never be used to accuse us. They've been removed. So our memory needs to dissolve. His memory has already done that. We cannot go back and think about it. But we must not sin willfully. We need to know what sin is, study his Torah, say, what is it that pleases you? And then, then we'll know what a crime is. The definition of sin hasn't been redefined. What used to be a sin remains sinful. Sin is still sin. But the penalty for the sins has been put upon the innocent lamb of Yahuwah. That's what the Passover is all about. We don't continue in sin. Romans 6 verse 1 informs us we should not continue to sin so that loving kindness might abound. That's not what we're to do. We're to stop that. And we are criminals if we continue to commit crimes against his Torah. If we do not listen to his instructions, if we turn our ear away from him, in other words, hearing the Torah, that would be Yeshayahu or Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20. If we turn our ear away from the Torah, even our prayers are an abomination. If we do not listen to his instructions, he said he would come to burn the entire earth. Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6. But what we have inherited from the church fathers has turned away many ears from hearing the Torah. This is a fact, causing our prayers to be an abomination in his ears. Now that's from Proverbs 28, verse 9. If you turn your ear away from the Torah, then your prayers are an abomination to him. And that matches perfectly with Isaiah or Yeshayahu 8:20. He who turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, even his prayers are an abomination. Now, during the day of distress, that's the tribulation, the Gentiles will come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited only lies and futility, and there is no value in them. In other words, they didn't reboot their computer and go back to the Torah. They have all these traditions. Inheriting lies and futility, that's what tradition is. Everything that we actually see, and this was admitted by a man on the radio when I was listening to the radio about 35 years ago. This Christian pastor was on Christian radio saying every single thing that Christians do actually originates from paganism. And we don't do a single thing that is written in Scripture. I don't know how he got away with saying it. But everything we see practiced is a strange fire from a pagan origin. Whatever it is, not a single thing that's practiced by Christians is found in the written word. The one we obey is the one that we are the servant of. Romans 6, verse 16. When will pastors begin to teach truth rather than defiling traditions?
You mentioned a scripture earlier on about senseless talk, idle chatter. I was talking to my boys about a week ago, one morning about, I think it was 1 Timothy, we were reading, and I said to them, unclean spirits like to come into this house, because Mum and Daddy are trying to keep them out. Unclean spirits like to come into this house, and the main way they come in is through idle chatter, senseless talk, things that we think in our mind are harmless. But if you're not checking your thoughts and not comparing it to the scripture, to the 10 Commandments, which is love, was talking to them along that vein. You know, are you loving one another? Is what you're saying loving, or is it just useless chattering? Because one will start chattering, and then the other one will start competing. Well, I can do that too, and I do this. Oh, well, I'll do that. And, well, then I'll do this to you, and then I'll do that to you, and then I'll do that to you, and then it either ends up in a brawl or a yelling match. I'm saying it's all useless talk. So, you know, it's ridiculous. So,
I was pointing the same thing out to my grandchildren. Yeah.
Yeah. Just useless talk. You know, there's no purpose in what you're saying. You're just chattering away, and there's no point.
They probably have a spirit of this guy right here. Yeah. Don't be an idiot. Yeah. Don't be like that.
Even the movies about 10, 15 years ago understood the Nimrod thing. They do the, hey, Nimrod! they use it as an
I don't
insult.
know anybody named Nimrod.
No. Yeah, it was always an insult.
Did I? I've never met a person that, look them up in the phone book or whatever, you know, and you're going, well, let's see if we can find any Nimrods. Nobody's last name or first name is Nimrod. I hope. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
for every thought he gives us, there's like 100 other negative things whispering in your ear, and we've had to learn the difference. You go, no, I'll hold on to that thought. That sounds positive. That sounds like him. Or is that just me making an excuse? No, I think that's him. You know, I'll believe that. And let's see if it is him. And then you hear that there's confirmation, and you go, okay, yeah, great, that was Yahusha. And you're starting to learn his voice a bit better, what his voice sounds like. So it's very important.
Every thought captive, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mark, because I recently experienced something like that. I've always been kind of jealous, I guess, of other people that say I heard his voice or he told me this, and I'm like, how do you know when he's talking to you? And just like you said, it was just like that. You almost had to listen, then test it, and then find out, yeah, that really was him talking. It's a trial and error, isn't it? To know when you're hearing his voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you?
Well, I think a lot of it is kind of like a bluff. It's like you step in there and go, I believe I've heard his voice. And a few weeks later, it might just go pear-shaped and you realise, no, that wasn't his voice. And so, but you've got the confidence to start with to say, okay, well, rather than being in a depressed indecision, which is where I've been most of the time, you stand on a thought and you go, okay, well, I'm going to believe that was Yahusha, and let's see if it was. So I think a lot of the people who say they've heard Yahusha's voice are just stepping out in confidence, and maybe they'll be wrong, maybe they won't. But I think what I was always taught was if you don't step in there and have an experience, you learn nothing. If you hold back and don't communicate or don't even try, you learn nothing. You don't. At least if you were wrong, you go, okay, well, yeah, I was wrong. That wasn't his voice. That was my plan. But at least you've had an experience with him. That was what I was sort of always encouraged to, not hold back and be gutless and that sort of thing. But yeah,
that's the goat thoughts. The goat's thinking, I'm going to do what I want to do, but the shepherd is saying, be a sheep. Yeah. Don't be a goat. Be submissive and and listen to my voice. But the false shepherds are out there too, guiding a lot of people.
Yeah, they're just thoughts. They're just thoughts. I think a lot of people who say, I heard Yahusha tell me this. Well, it wasn't a massive divine encounter. It was you're just filtering hundreds of thoughts all the time and picking out the ones that you think are Yahusha. I think those who say, I heard Yahusha's voice, are simply disciplined enough to give him credit for them. Instead of just saying, I thought to give you a call today. Instead of saying that, they'll say, well, Yahusha told me to give you a call today. They're including him. I think a lot of it's just...
That's an excellent point, Mark. At least they are, like you said, acknowledging him. Because he says, acknowledge Yahuwah in all your ways, and he will direct your path.
Yeah.
So that's an excellent point. I like that.
Yeah.
Because every time we'd come along and we'd go, oh, I did this or I did that, or someone would always say to me, who? You know, who gave you that thought? You know, who? Of ourselves, we're just nothing. Anything we hold up to Yahusha and go, look what I did, it's just filthy rags. You know, it's just, without him, we're nothing. So I think a lot of people who say they heard from Yahusha are just giving him the credit that it's due. So it's not a huge. Why can't I be in that situation? Why aren't I as spiritual, or why aren't I as further along as other people? I think it's simply what we're going to talk about today. I think belief. He says, come boldly into the throne room. Come boldly. Just have it. Just have it. Everybody's at different levels and different maturities and different stages, but just come to me. I'm here. I'm here. Come to me. If you don't believe you can come to me, that's your problem. You don't believe it. You don't believe that I'm there, so you don't get it. Just come. Just have it. You don't have to go. You don't have to pay penance or anything. Just come and have it. Enter into the throne room. You know. And we often hear so many negative thoughts, like, "Oh, he doesn't love me anymore." You know, look what I've been. Look what I've done. You know, and you just go, like, it's like shameful. And yet you look at your own children and go, I wouldn't ever want my children to feel like that, no matter what they did. And how much he's just amazing. So how
Actually, the scriptures does refer to itself in several places. It calls itself something. Like Daniel, one of my favorite ones, I think it's in chapter 10. He calls this the scripture of truth, which is really just two Hebrew words. It's kathab ameth. Kathab means scripture or handwriting, the writing, kathab, and ameth means truth. So this is the scripture of truth. And Stephen called it the living words, you know. And of course that would mean the green tree. When people hear the term green tree and dry tree, they're talking about, when they say the green tree, they're talking about some person that is abiding in the living waters. They're like a tree planted by the streams of water, and they're getting nourishment. But a dry tree does not have nourishment, because this is living water. And the code words are not understood. But they've abandoned that. See, Christianity is the name of a form of witchcraft that is actually practicing everything that he said don't do. And they're doing absolutely nothing that he told them to do. And then they're turning around and saying, well, you don't have to do any of that, because that would be works, and that would be legalism. And so in the book, I talk about what legalism is from Yahuwah's perspective. And I'm challenging people to think about this carefully. Would any prophet ever speak in Yahuwah's name and say, you guys are just too obedient. You're actually trying to obey me. You shouldn't be doing that. Or would Yahusha ever say, depart from me, you workers of legalism, trying to be obedient to my laws, my orders, my directives? Who is it that he's going to say, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness? Anomia, you know, that's what the real Greek word was. But the idea, though, is that they're disobedient. So when you try to obey, then suddenly you're called a legalist. And a legalist is a good name. It's a good term to be called. You know, if you're before the throne of the universe and someone walks up and says, you should pitch this guy in the lake of fire because he was teaching your commandments. And he was trying to obey your commandments. Away with him. We just believe. Well, see, even the demons believe, but they don't obey. They don't walk in the way, you know. And that's the mystery that people don't see. The psychosis is so strong that they listen to the teaching authority of some person. They're really listening to the church fathers, the circus fathers, we should say. And the Circus Fathers were anti-Semitic, but they were also anti-Torah. They did not want people obeying. And who was it? I think it was Epiphanius, who was quoted, when we were talking about on our Natsarim study, who the Natsarim were. They were considered heretics. Can you imagine that? And we still are. I mean, people look at us and they say, they're so hateful. But we're not condemning people. We're not burning them at the stake. On the other hand, those people that were obeying the commandments were being burned at the stake by those who said, we can't have this works thing. You've got to get there by the sacraments. What? Where are we going to find the sacraments in here? There are no sacraments. That's all nonsense. And that is what this book is really going after without the gloves on. I mean, it's really just coming right at it, and it's not kidding around. His commands are not difficult. Can you find one on this list that's too difficult? Email us or whatever and call us. Leave a message on YouTube or something and say, this is what I can't keep. It's too hard. Well, it's not. With the power of Yahusha, you can do it. You learn how to love. He writes a love for them on your heart. That's the circumcision. Now, what old paths or what old commands are we talking about? Malachi 4, verse 4 through 6, prepares us for the end times. This is what it says. It talks about the Torah of Moshe. Now, that was the Torah that Yahuwah gave to Moshe for us to obey. The trainer or schoolmaster. This thing trains us. And when you go to school and you learn what the schoolmaster taught, you don't just walk out of school and say, well, I'm done with that. You practice what you learned in school. The trainer or schoolmaster has trained us. So we have to practice what we learn. Now, the works of the devil divert us away from the Torah of Yahuwah. How many people have sat in a pew and heard that these commandments are too hard, but they don't have any scripture on that? They just say it. No one can obey that. Well, anyway, it's the programming of the world, and it's a planet-wide illusion of false reasoning. This is a stronghold. Most people are always toiling to amass an empire of dirt. I was looking over at my guitar the other day and going, what? That thing's made out of dirt.
The whole book of Scripture is teaching us how to love, teaching us what was Yahusha really like when he walked around. Nobody can work out why was he so phenomenal. Why did these men just leave their jobs? And that's just stupid. You don't just leave your job and follow somebody. And they did. Why? Why would you do that? There must have been something in his eyes. There must have been something that they felt when he came along. And everybody's trying to learn all this head knowledge and study, but a lot of people still can't discover how he behaved, how he was. They look at all the rules. That's what Amy was saying. There's so many rules in Messianic land or Natsarim land. There's so many rules because people want to do the opposite to what Christianity is, which is lawless. So people are coming in and adopting so many rules, and they're not seeing the man himself. They're not seeing how he behaved, how he was, how much he died to himself just to let everybody have who they wanted to be. He spoke the truth, but he also was just not argumentative, not combative. He wasn't fighting people. He was just loving them. And so between a husband and wife, we did a lot of discussing about that. Between a husband and wife, what process we've been through for the last decade or so since we'd learnt this, and the practice we'd had, just to get the message out there, I think, because I think Natsarim need to be released in this area. There's a lot of fighting, husband and wives sort of not knowing how to get further in the relationship. And of course, the way to do it is to die. The way to do it is to die to yourself. Self has to die.
And Yahuwah's true character is not known to them. He's not a torturer. He's not one of those. Many believe Yahuwah is a terrible, unforgiving person. But and they even say it, oh, that Old Testament guy, he was really mean and angry and unforgiving. When they learn that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and how they comprehend how great his love truly is, kings will shut their mouths. If you read Yeshayahu 52, it tells you who it is that came and walked among us. And it even says, kings will know and understand, and they will shut their mouths. And it talks about him becoming a servant, like you talked about earlier. Becoming a servant is critical. If you don't become a servant, then you're like that rich man and Lazarus or Elazar. You're just missing the whole point. One of the things that is in becoming the likeness of a man, and having been found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death even of a stake. And that helps explain why the name Yahusha means Yahuwah is our deliverer. I am your deliverer. And believe me, that's not an idiom.
Mm.
Isn't that music to your ears?
Oh, amazing.
That's an idiom.
Amazing, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's been great. Yeah, very, very important.
Yeah, becoming a servant. It's what you started talking about.
Yeah, I would just like to say to all the brothers and sisters in your marriage, just try it for one day. Just don't have any opinions. Don't be outspoken. Let your partner, your spouse, husband, wife, have it. Just let them have who they think they are. Let them have their way in a day, and see what happens, and see how much abuse you get to start with. But then, if you'll see that it works, and then you do it another day, and another day, and another. And if something happens and you lose your cool, or there's an argument, or you blow it, then you just the truth sets you free. You say, I'm sorry, and you start again.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be the answer to every marriage. It's the answer to make it work. Because everywhere, how do I change my wife? How do I change my husband? I just can't change them, particularly if they're unbelievers. But even if they are believers, we just can't get along. This is the answer. One person has to do what Yahusha did for us. That's why he says, husbands, love your wives like I love the assembly. Gave up my life for the assembly. You've got to give up your life for your wife. Everything you think you are online, your reputation, what you think's important, you put aside for your wife and your family, or vice versa if the wife's going to do it. But it's the answer. Everything we're learning, everything Yahusha's giving you, which is feeding us, has to be absorbed, has to be digested into a behaviour. And of course, the behaviour is love. And how do we love? People say, oh, yeah, love. We mean stickers and cards. Yes, love, love, love. How do we do it, though? How do we step out? What do I do when I get up in the morning and I've got this thing next to me behaving at me a certain way and saying things to me and no respect for me and, she this and she that and she this and that, or he this and he that, if you're the wife. How do I change this oaf? And this is how you do it. You let them have everything, because if you step out of the equation, then you'll start seeing Yahusha. Like you said, hot coals will fall on their head. Love it. Do loving things to someone and often our husbands and wives are the ones that hate us the most in a day, showing the most hatred to us. So if you love somebody who's hating you, you'll see Yahusha start flogging the hell out of somebody, and you can rejoice because you know that. Obviously, if you're starting this process, then Yahusha's given you a spark of something's not right here. So you are actually the one leading by humbling yourself. Just step out. Just let them have it. It's not worth it getting into the drama.
It will change the whole trajectory, not only of your mortal life, but it'll change the trajectory of your eternal life as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we're talking about it.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to be the way you are now. You can change with His power and help.
Mm. Well, thank you everybody for watching the show once again for another year. It's just the way I divide up the shows. It's easier.
Yeah.
End of the year. Yeah, we'll be back next year with more juicy topics.
Okay. You are willing.
Who are willing. Yeah.
All right. Well, I love you.
Thank you, mate. Love you too.
We'll see you later.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
They keep repeating these things, saying, Lord is your name, and so they shun you. Substitution ain't the way. Gotta live in Torah, Torah, Torah. Gotta live in Torah's laws. Usher in the latter rain. So the world's gonna know your name. You're making love to demons in the synagogue tonight. Must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch. I listen to lies, biding my time, drinking more wine. After 2730 years, I am free to know who you are. This lost sheep has come to his senses. The awakening brought me this far. 'Cause I am falling deeper in love with you.
He was pierced for our transgression, bruised for our iniquity. The punishment that brought our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. Through his blood we have been sealed. The hand that passed us over crushed our king. The perfect offering. You are.
You're the hope that I
The
cling
hope
to.
that I cling to.
You mean to me.
You mean more than this world.
More than this
to
world.
me.
Yes, you are.
I wouldn't trade you.
I would not
for
trade you. Silver or gold. I wouldn't trade you.
We overcome by the blood of the Lamb. We overcome by the word of our witness. Longing for my King, Yahusha, glowing with your shield, Yahusha. We are witnesses and watchmen of Torah. We are olive trees with a word from Yahusha. Where the scattered prodigals, the house of Ephraim. Name of you, Yerushalayim. Take us to that city, Yerushalayim. Shofars are shed down, Yerushalayim. With love and light eternal, Yerushalayim. With Yahusha. Prophesy, dry bones rise. Speak forth your word, oh Yah.
We have direct access to King Yahusha. By belief we gather to King Yahusha.
Return to ancient times. Return to me.
Lamp of life, lamp of life, go lamp of life. saw my teacher, his name, and so much in his Torah. He wrote them in my heart and then made me his servant. I say, I love Yahusha. I love him. His living water. I love it.